everybody, welcome back to Byte Club, the monthly indie game club podcast. I'm your host, Nevin.
And I'm your other host, Jesse.
And this month we are talking about Heart Machine's Hyperlight Drifter.
Hyperlight Drifter?
Yeah. That's a good jingle. Is that the theme song for Hyperlight Drifter?
That's what it is, actually, originally. We had to change it.
When you booted up the alpha, it would just say, Hyperlight Drifter.
Little guitar riff at the end.
We'll press start to play. As a reminder, we will be discussing spoilers later on in this podcast. The first half is completely spoiler-free, and it's going to be pretty obvious when we're going into spoilers. So, without further ado, let's get to frickin' talking about a video game. So, Hyperlight Drifter is a 2D top-down ways action game that's kind of like giving ARPG hooked up with The Legend of Zelda, and they raised a child with love and care. It's got mystery, wordless storytelling, some great action, and local co-op as a post-launch edition. It is a fantastic, challenging adventure that kicks a whole lot of ass. I fucking love this game.
Man, yeah, it is killer. Like I said last time we did this, it's not very often that we get to play a bad game, like a game that's not even bad, like to play a game that's not stellar at the very least, you know? Like to play a game that's not stellar at the very least is just, it's awesome. I'm glad that every time people vote for, or we end up just picking a game, it's always a good time. So
it's
nice.
Been fucking killer. I think we're whatever number this is out of that same number. we're batting a million. It's so good.
It's pretty good. Get at us, Hank Aaron. He played baseball, right? I don't know. Anyways,
I don't
Hyperlight Drifter.
You're way ahead of me with knowing a name. I was gonna say Michael Jordan.
That's my favorite. He did play baseball, didn't he? Yeah.
He did.
You were right.
I did that on purpose. I did it on purpose. This game fucking rips. It's so good. I originally played the single player when it first came out, like before they added in 60 FPS capability to it, and I didn't actually get to finish it. I got real close. I was in the last like 2 areas, but I just didn't get to finish it before I had to get the video out. But this time I actually ran through in a mix of co-op and solo stuff, and I gotta say that like I did try co-op when it was first added in, and it had some issues. It was not the best. You shared a health pool, I think, and like the respawning system was really weird. But I'm super happy to say that it's been really like improved on, and it's really fun. And even though it does make the game easier, it's not a bad thing. It feels like more fair.
Yeah, definitely. There were a lot of changes after the fact that really improved the difficulty for a lot of people. They even added a mode for beginners, right? Like a lower difficulty mode.
They did, yeah. Did I play through that on this playthrough? I don't remember if I chose that.
I imagine you wouldn't have, but yeah, no, it's cool that stuff like that is included. Like we talked about it in one of the episodes where we discussed difficulty a little more in depth. Celeste, yeah, that's what it was.
We talked about it a lot on Celeste. It was a big player there.
Big part of it, yeah.
I think that like in general, even still at present in single player, the game's definitely a little heavy-handed on difficulty. But I will say, overall, it feels better to play, and I think that is, like, because a lot of the issues when the game first came out, like, a lot of the times I would mess up in combat or something like that, it didn't always feel like it was my fault, and I'm gonna be a gamer and blame it on the fact that it was 30 frames per second, because, like, I notice a difference. Like, I played with the frame limiter for this just to, like, check, and it feels different.
Yeah, I mean, you've got double the amount of time. It goes from, 33.3, whatever the hell, milliseconds to react to something, to dash away, to do something like that, down to, 16. milliseconds. Like it is half the time.
God, it's so ridiculous when like you lay out the exact numbers of it. Like,
yeah,
it doesn't seem like increments so small should make such a difference.
It sounds like nothing, but once you play with that sort of that difference, once you are able to experience what it's like to play at that level, you know, it's hard to go back to it. I think a lot of people have the same experience with using 120 hertz displays or 144 hertz displays. You don't really...
Seems like such a ridiculous number to me.
Whatever. Like, what are you cutting down? Like, you know, like a couple milliseconds of refresh, like maybe 2 milliseconds of refresh. Good job. But then you go back and you use a 60 hertz display or a 90 hertz display and you're like, ugh, really? This is what I was using all the time? How did I do anything with this?
I can't wait for the 60 versus 30 website to up to like 120 versus 60 versus 30.
Yeah, I'm sure in no time that'll be the case. I mean, you know, at a point you get diminishing returns, but there's always something when you make that big of a jump, and it's half the frame time. That's going to be a huge difference compared to, say, going from 60 to 70. Going from 30 to 60 is huge. In terms of, especially in a game like this where timing is so specific and dodging out of the way is such a big deal. It's hard to really say. And, you know, there's other things too, not even just dodging. Like when you do a charged attack, you have to know the timing of when you can release it, the timing of when you've, like, the sound effect plays, but there's also visual cues, and the more time you have to react to that and for the game to accept inputs, the more precise you're going to be, the better you are going to be at the game, which is awesome.
Not just that, but like there's a whole feel aspect of it, right? Like when a game doesn't respond like right when you want it to, you can feel that, and it's much the same as like on a mechanical level being able to toss in your reactions, but when you feel that the game is not reacting to your inputs exactly or close enough, it's really noticeable.
Yeah, definitely. You feel that sort of thing, I think anyways, a lot of people do when they play a lot of the bigger action games like on PS4. You played Red Dead Redemption as well, so I'm sure you can understand where I'm coming from. But Red Dead Redemption 2, despite how good it is, really has a lot of delay on its inputs, which isn't a bad thing necessarily. And I think for that game, it really makes it feel a lot more like what they wanted it to feel like, which is good. You know, it's obviously, there's a reason that they would do something like that. At times, other times it's just frame rate related and the game looks better than it really needs to. But you know, that sort of thing does, I think, impact a lot of people's enjoyment of the game, and people who are even relatively okay at games, when you have that sort of limitation in the frame rate, that can really impact your ability to enjoy it properly. So yeah, I think it's something, especially in this case, that we can look at and say, like, you know, there are times where it's not just hashtag gamers saying like, you know, this game doesn't run at 60, it's garbage, poo-poo, trash. But like, you know, there are legitimate reasons to want games to be 60 FPS, and that is, or as high as the frame rate will let it be. And that's good, you know, and they don't really sacrifice a whole lot by making that change. Making the game 60 was as simple as, you know, flicking a switch in Game Maker. Obviously not that simple. There's things they have to account for. But it didn't impact the animations. They are still animating at, you know, 12 or 15 frames, which is great.
When the game came out, I actually think Game Maker didn't support 60 frames per second.
Well, so...
that I may be misremembering, and I probably am.
That's a thing that was said a lot. And it was, like, partially true. There's nothing stopping you from changing games to be 60 in Game Maker as far as I understand. But it has something to do with the sprite animations. You can't really change the frame rate on the fly. You have to animate based on the frame timing that you do at the start. Changing it earlier, it might have been an update that made it easier to just flip it over to 60. But as far as I understand, doing it manually at the time would have just been too expensive and too time consuming. So, you know, you can't give them a whole lot of crap for it. It's stuff that's not in their control, but it's good that they were able to make the change. Clearly a lot of people started to appreciate it a lot more, which is good.
Yeah, for sure. That makes a lot more sense. Yeah.
And that sort of thing with the engine illiteracy, or like the lack of understanding, the ignorance, I guess, is maybe a more malicious way of putting it. But it's
people think that's a harsh word, but like that's the word.
It is.
It's when you don't know something.
Yeah, it's almost a refusal to understand to an extent, and to do your own research, because like,
well, that's willful ignorance.
Sure. Well, I think, you know, there's a good sect of people like that.
Here we go.
But I mean, the same sort of thing. Like, people were blaming Game Maker for being the reason why Hyper Light Drifter wasn't running at 60 or wasn't as functional as they would have liked it to be. And at times you can blame the tools that people end up using to create things for the reason, like as to be the reason why there are certain problems with things. But I think people attribute the flaws of certain games to the tools that they're created in. And you can see that a lot with the discussions around Unity, like especially Unity.
Oh god, anytime a YouTuber starts talking shit on a game, his game's bad because it's in Unity.
Yeah, and it's not just dismissive. It's like, really, would you blame a painter for using acrylics over water or something like that?
Yes.
Like it doesn't make any sense. Shut up. It just doesn't make any sense to me to blame the tool when it's so universally constructed. Like, had they created a custom engine, it might have been better, but like, would it have really changed a whole lot? Would have been worth the development time? I don't think so.
Probably not, especially since I think they're I'm talking out of my ass again, but weren't they a relatively new development team?
Well, so a lot of the people on the team, the lead programmer, the sound designer, the musician, obviously,
prior experience,
lots of prior experience, but as a team, not really a whole lot of time working together. It ended up being, I think, a group of about 6 actual developers and a bunch of contractors.
Yes, that number sounds right.
So, not a huge team.
It's pretty crazy. 6 people made this game.
6 or 8, something like that. Like a small, less than 10, I think, is what it ended up being.
Between 1 and 10 people made this game.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just one of the big success stories for smaller developers past that sort of 2012, 2013 renaissance of indie games, but it's also one of the big success stories for Kickstarter. I think a lot of people forget that this was a Kickstarted game. It blew past its...
forget all the time.
A lot of people do. A lot of people forget that the successful, good Kickstarter games were Kickstarter games because,
Except
usually...
Shovel Knight.
Except
Nobody
Shovel
forgets
Knight.
that Shovel Knight was Kickstarter.
But, that's another one of those sort of darling things. And I think it's easy to forget that, too, because the games get Kickstarted and it takes 4 years for them to come out. And then, the developer stops talking on Kickstarter because why would you bother? That's like the least useful platform to discuss what's going on with your game. You'd rather do it on other places. And it's just it's really interesting to me how this game ended up being so successful off the back of Kickstarter, where now it seems like if you kickstart your game, you kind of aren't dooming yourself, but there's so much negativity surrounding it. I don't know if you feel the same way.
Kickstarter. No, I definitely do. I have backed a lot of games on Kickstarter. I don't want to open up my profile and count it because then I'll get sad. But a lot of them don't come out. A lot of them get canceled, or you miss the refund offer when the project fails after funding. It's weird. I backed Drift Stage, and they just ghosted.
Damn.
It happens a lot. And I kind of understand the negativity that comes with Kickstarter. There's a whole lot of factors around it, too, that are kind of outside of the direct control of developers. It's a platform with a history that has flavored the perception of future projects, at least within the realm of video games. Tabletop games, they're always on Kickstarter, and they do fine. And they release within 4 months instead of 4 years. But there's definitely a perception towards games. And it has to do with a few bad eggs, I think. And just the nature of the platform being used. It's been used for a lot of scams. There was the one with that team that was reporting to be a part of the original Stalker game. They were saying oh, we're making another game. Check all this stuff out. It's going to be great. It's basically Stalker again. But AAA, wow. And it turned out that they had stolen all of their art assets. The people listed in the credits or listed in the team on the Kickstarter had worked on Stalker, but not at all doing what they said they did, or they were at the company but didn't work on Stalker. It was crazy.
Yikes.
That was I gave into the hype on that one. I had backed it, and then the next day the news came out and people were like, yeah, this isn't good. Luckily that was discovered, you know?
Yeah.
But I get it. I digress. I get it. I don't know where I was going with that. That happens a lot.
Well,
How are you doing, Jesse?
No, I get what you're saying. It's, you know, the game, in this case, Hyper Light Drifter really, it ended up being so successful on the back of Kickstarter and on the back of the hype of, you know, stuff like Mighty Number 9. And I don't know if that was around the same time, but I just mean projects like that.
It was like 2 years after.
Okay.
I think it's that it ended up being successful on Kickstarter before the attitude towards Kickstarter greatly shifted.
Well, yeah, so that's why I brought up Mighty Number 9, is because that's kind of the thing that I think made people go, okay, Kickstarter is not a gold mine to fund the perfect projects that publishers just aren't making. It is still a risky platform.
I don't think that was the thing. I think it was already starting to shift by then, because like by then I had already backed a bunch of stuff that had faded out before Mighty Number 9 came along, showed up, and then was released.
Sure.
I think that that's a solid example of like the biggest one.
I think
people in the ass.
I think just from what I understand from the gaming landscape, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. Like, yeah, there was a lot of stuff before that, but that was like the thing where everyone was like, pizza explosions, Kickstarter, actually the worst thing to ever happen.
They were like, everybody was crying like an anime fan on prom night.
Oh boy, all right. I don't want to ever think about that game ever again. I feel bad for saying the name of it out loud. Yeah, it
was bad. It was bad. But
I'm glad that Hyper Light Drifter is good.
Drifter.
Yeah,
it's very good. We should probably talk about the game we're here to talk about.
We should. Well, you know, that's part of this, is talking about stuff tangential to the game, because we can't talk about spoilers. So
game's good as hell. Oh
something
my God,
that I think
so
is really
good.
interesting, and it's not a spoiler, so it's okay. Speaking of those, this game was the lead director of it is Alex Preston. He was born with a congenital heart disease. His story actually has a lot to do with some of the stuff going on in Hyper Light Drifter. You could feel a lot of it.
Yes, it's like a direct,
it's a really good
theme.
Allegory for his life.
Yes, I fucking love it so much.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like the fact that the character, the Drifter, as it's called, spends so much time, like, just in pain, dying. You randomly feel his heart just like stopping, and you can't move, and it feels like you're gonna die randomly. Like the first time I played this, I thought every time the character just stopped moving, I was like, oh, is this like a random death that can happen sometimes? That's awful. Like, you know, and from the gameplay perspective, it feels like that, but for Alex, it probably felt, you know, just almost cathartic to present that sort of thing to people and be like, this is how my life feels. Like every minute I could randomly just stop and not have any control over it. And that's
every
scary.
day is a fight, and at the end of each moment in it, like I could just break down.
Yeah, and that is super powerful. I can't think of a whole lot of games that express that sort of emotion, that kind of feeling so
it's
clearly.
It's a fear.
It is a real fear, a real unstoppable fear that Preston has no control over. And that's something that you can't bottle and sell. That's not something that you can show the player with, you know, a scary monster like an Amnesia or the alien that might show up and kill you, because, you know, the next second you could get back up and it doesn't matter. You'll owe the last save.
You know what? It's especially interesting because you can respawn. Like when you die in the game, like when your HP reaches 0, you just respawn. But with these, there's something about these that throughout the game, especially from a blind experience, like has you thinking, what is this? It's so alien to our experience as people who play games.
Yeah, and people who are privileged enough to not have those problems as well.
Also that.
Yeah.
It's awesome. I love it. And there's some I want to talk more about these themes when we get into spoilers, because I feel like there's a lot there.
Yeah, absolutely.
The music's great.
Yeah, I was just going to say the music is fantastic. Like
it's so good.
So Disaster Piece has worked on a lot of stuff in the past. This wasn't the first indie game project by a wide margin. He worked on Fez. He's worked on pieces for Netflix, for like recently he worked on music for one of their new movies that just came out. He worked on music for It Follows. He worked on music for a bunch of stuff, like a lot of really high profile indie stuff, which is awesome.
I had no idea. That's awesome.
Disaster Piece is huge. Like I think he has a track on the Nuclear Throne OST. Like it's crazy how much stuff they've worked on, and you know, huge respect to the guy. He's just constantly working on stuff. It's so impressive. And the fact that each project has different sounding music that fits the mood, like one of the earliest moments in this game, literally the opening cutscene, is punctuated by music in a way that we talked about it in the Bastion video, but just how important the musicians are to the production of something like this is it cannot be it can't be understated. It just can't be. This game excels so well at presenting its aesthetic, presenting its world, presenting its drama by its music, by how it times it, how it builds it, how it dynamically adjusts to what you are looking at and where you are. Stuff like that is so impressive. It's masterful. And we talked about it before, like I said, but like I can't get over when people do stuff like this, when they try to evoke an emotion, whether that is fear or surprise or just awe at the beauty of the world or the destruction of, you know, just what happened in the past and the ruins of it. It blows my mind. Every time I think about certain moments in this game, I get chills. It is so ridiculously good at presenting itself. And that's something that, you know, I think we just keep running into with the games that we play on this. It's just these people get what they want people to see and want people to hear about their games, and they get it across every time, and it just feels so good. And I don't know if there are a lot of games outside of the indie space that are like that. I mean, so that's the question I want to pose to you. Can you think of AAA games that are as good at this sort of thing? And I know the first thing that probably comes to mind, because it comes to mind for me, is Red Dead Redemption 2. Is that where you were going?
I was going to say Red Dead 1, actually.
Okay, so I haven't played Red Dead 1. Without spoiling anything, could you give across an example from that?
Hey, it's a spoiler.
Then never mind.
There's a moment towards the end of the game, like maybe last 40 minutes to hour and a half, where they pull out some music in much the same way they do in 2.
Okay.
With, like, they pull out music that has vocals.
Right.
And I feel like it does it better than 2 did.
Oh, wow.
2 has a couple of moments where they pull out vocals. Not this one. This is the one song with vocals, and I think about it, and, like, I'm going back to it. I'm, like, going through that adventure again. And it's wild. It is perfect.
Nice. Well, I'm excited to get to that eventually.
One of these days.
I'll get to it. You know,
while you're at it, play Undead Nightmare, because that's just amazing.
Yeah, I got both on 360, so I'm excited to check those out.
I'm like looking through the games that I have installed, and I'm trying to find AAA ones, and they're all indie.
Well, so
Mirror's Edge did a good job, but I feel like that was in a different way.
Mirror's Edge is a lot more, I think, sound design that sells it a lot more than it is the music, which isn't a bad thing. I think just sound in general, like, obviously, don't get it twisted. I'm not trying to act like anyone that's listening that's like, wow, this guy sure does like indie games too much. But, like, you know, I think...
No, that's me on the record. That's
right,
me.
That is you. I think that obviously AAA games are very, very good at it. They have talented musicians, talented sound designers that have been doing stuff for 10, 20, 30 years, right? These people are insanely talented, but I just feel like because of how large they are, it's so hard to sell singular moments in the same sort of way that indie games could sell constantly. Hyper Light Drifter has multiple moments in it where you will be caught up in the awe of what is happening, the desolation, the beauty, the harmony of machine and nature. It's so beautiful. And I think to games like that are within the AAA space, and they are lucky to have one or two moments that really sell the music, sell the feeling of the game. Like I think of God of War, and there's maybe like 2 or 3 moments, and that game's like 25, 30 hours. where Hyper Light Drifter's like, it's 80 if you're bad. Hyper Light Drifter is what, like 8 hours at most.
At most.
And that, that has more, probably twice as many moments.
I would say it's near constant.
Yeah, like every time you walk somewhere, every screen is a new presentation of a beautiful scenario punctuated by music and sound and the characters. It's like this. If I were to describe the world and the design of Hyper Light Drifter, it would be a poem in manifest. Like, just it's you play through it, you walk through it, and it's like someone is telling you a story. It is. It's someone telling you a story, and each region is a new chapter. It's a new thing it's trying to tell you about the world, about humanity, about the past and the present, and how they coexist and are symbiotic in nature. It's so beautiful. It's such a beautiful game, not just visually, not just audibly, not just in its narrative that, it's sparse narrative that doesn't really tell, but like just in what it does with what it has. It is so, so gorgeous. I can't get over the fact that this game both exists and is as good as it is.
I think you like this game, Jesse.
I think I like Hyper Light Drifter. I didn't think I liked it this much, but I do.
So it's actually been a while since you played it, right?
It has, yeah.
Did you touch it again at all for the podcast or no?
I did. I always do, no matter what. I've played most of the games that we've covered before we end up doing the podcast episode. I play some indie games before in my life, man. And I played this one again. I played it on launch, same as you. I played the 30 FPS mode. I played, all that sort of stuff, the more glitchy version of it that had weird, issues with the
it was weird
cutscenes and everything. But yeah, playing it again, it was cool because I knew everything. It had been obviously 2-3 years since I played it, but I remembered everything, and I went through the scenarios, and I was like, yeah, this is still so powerful. Like
3 years, by the way.
Yeah, 3 years. Wow, time is the worst.
Grandpa.
That's me. The first time I played it, I don't know nothing about no Hyper Light Drifter. First time I played it, I was in awe of the same moments that I was in awe of now, despite knowing when they were coming, despite knowing where they were, despite understanding games in a totally different way. It feels like nothing has changed for the power this game has. I feel like a lot of games, like we were talking about it with Bastion as well, despite Bastion being so good, it is still a product of its time. Yeah, it is aged not in the best way. And I think back to the moments when I played that where I was so awestruck by what games could be, by what they could do with their stories and how they could present them, and visually how they could represent themselves, and the music, right? All that sort of stuff. But I went back to play it for the podcast, and while I still really enjoyed it, I didn't feel the same things I felt when I first played it. And it's hard to do that when you're making an indie game. It's hard to make a game that will feel the same way 10 years or 5 years or 3 years even from when it first comes out.
There's a whole lot of things that come into play with how well a game ages, and it's beyond just how it plays, I guess. There's trends and stuff like that and all sorts of shit.
Yeah, the cultural significance of it, what does it end up saying for games and for people, all that sort of stuff. But Hyper Light Drifter, man, I came back to it and I was just, it was like I played it for the first time again, despite, again, remembering everything, getting to the bosses and being like, I know what I have to do to cheese this guy, It's just so cool. I think this is one of the best games ever made. Like, as I keep talking about it, I did not think I liked it that much, but as we keep talking about it, I really, really like Hyper Light Drifter. And I think if you're listening to this and you haven't played it, you owe it to me to play it. Please.
You owe it to Jesse. You owe it
to me.
Play this game. I mean, you summed it up great. Like, I feel pretty much the same on all those things. You didn't say anything I disagreed with, so I guess I think it's also one of the best games ever made.
Whoopsie daisy.
Whoops. Here we go. We like video games.
Oops.
Man, I don't think I have any spoiler-free questions from myself for you with regards to this. Except man, shit's good. Question mark?
Shit game good, right? Yes, good.
Is it good? Yes.
Yes, that is it. Thanks for listening. This has been the Byte Club podcast. And
we're never doing another one.
Oh, okay.
Just kidding. Okay, we've got some listener submitted questions for this here spoiler-free Sexerino. So, first up we've got at HeyAtMeBen on Twitter, friend of the show, Ben, good dude. He's asking, how do you feel about how secrets are hidden with those little squares on the map that you have to sort of press a button to activate it? So this is, I think, referring specifically to like there are invisible platforms, and if you go up to the right area, hold down the interact button, it'll show you the platforms. What do you think about those?
I assume Ben means also just like any of the secrets that are like that.
Any of the secrets, yeah. Not all of them are denoted, which I think is an important thing to point out. I personally kind of like it because it reminds me of like wall chicken in Castlevania. Like,
yeah,
any of the old school secrets where you keep an eye out for a part of the environment, a tile that is slightly different, or like a wall in the original Doom that its texture doesn't line up and the lighting's a little different.
Yeah.
It felt very retro to me, not just a plain Jane way of handling it.
Yeah, I mean, there have been a lot of very, very astute connections between Hyper Light Drifter and The Legend of Zelda, specifically Link to the Past and those sort of isometric or top-down versions of The Legend of Zelda. And
it is self-proclaimed as an influence too. So.
Totally, yeah. But some people say that, and then we just made a game with a sword character in it sometimes. But yeah, this I think that is the logical progression of that sort of thing in a game where solving puzzles is not the solution half the time. It's exploring, it's finding, right? So it's less, did you see the rock wall? Do you have a bomb? Blow it up. It's more like you found a thing, go find more, right? Like every time you find a secret, it's usually leading you to either another secret or to something that is going to help you in some way.
They're all off screen.
Yeah, they are.
Like
they're
it
always
does make you. The screen changes in order for you to get to it.
Yeah, they're always in spots where you can't. Usually, it's probably 50% of the time, you can manipulate the camera a little bit and you can see some of the secrets, sort of where they are. You can see areas of the map that you haven't been to. So there's something over there and there's a way to get there. And that stuff's good. The level design of the game, it's obviously very combat oriented. There's very little to do in the game that's not fighting or looking for things, which isn't a complaint by any means. But the design is very combat oriented. So it's good that there are still ways to incorporate that without getting in the way of itself. And I think it's good that they included things like that, those little squares. While there are moments where I think exploration isn't exactly handled particularly well, especially if you're going for 100%, it is still really, like, it just feels really good when you see something. Like you said, when you see those gaps in the wall, or you see those sort of weird lighting differences, or there's like a bit of geometry that looks a little off compared to the rest of the area.
Clever.
It does,
it
exactly.
Astute.
The ones that are pointed out to you with the squares, those are good too.
Yeah.
But
and it rewards you with more exploration, which, like you said, was not by any means the core focus of this game. But every time I found a secret, I felt like, oh, neat, cool, pleasant.
Yeah.
It was never like a secret that made me go, oh shit, dude. Oh, jeez.
Yeah. It's always nice.
And I think that also kind of leads into the rewards and the importance of them.
Yeah.
God, you need upgrades in this game. Hoo boy.
Yeah, definitely. Especially once you get to some of those bosses.
Don't you dare fight some of these bosses without at least the dash. Oh, Jesus.
Oh, gee whiz.
Oh, gee willikers. So next up, we actually have 2 questions from Puking Goombas. And he is asking, so the first question he asks is, if some way, somehow we get a sequel, what would you change or add to make combat more interesting? So he did not actually know about, no shit, I'm forgetting its I forget names. Solar Ash Kingdom?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus. I cannot not forget names of games on this freaking show. Cody wasn't actually aware that Solar Ash Kingdom was a thing that exists, and it's not really a sequel. It's another game set in the same universe. So let's just pretend it's a sequel, like a direct sequel.
Sure.
What would you change or add to the combat to make it more interesting?
So it's tough because I don't know if there's much you can add to the current setup of the game that doesn't get in the way of what it's already doing. The enemies,
I think I agree.
And the way that they fight, the way that they maneuver around the character, their different interactions, the way that they jump and attack and swing and charge and all that sort of stuff. All of that is varied enough that to make the combat more difficult or more interesting, all you have to do is overlap them in different ways. And, that is a perfectly fine way of doing it. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with just changing what enemies fight together to add enough challenge. But I think if I were to answer that question, if someone put a gun to my head and say, what do you have to add to the game? The only thing I can really think of is like a clone or something, like a distraction clone almost, or something like Transistor's pause mode, where
that'd be really cool to see. The tactical mode.
Tactical mode, yeah, but not tactical mode in that like you can like pause the game and then do some actions and queue them up. Pause the game in that you just slow down time and you can move somewhere else.
Yes, that's exactly where I thought you were going with that.
Yeah, like you can, you hit a button
like
combo.
If you perfect dodge and you get
like which time would be cool.
Exactly.
That would be awesome.
Super cool.
Yeah, that would actually be that would be the perfect addition for sure.
That would
something
be the
like
one,
that.
I think. Yeah. Next up he's asking, and next up he says, I have one last barely on topic question. Would y'all be down for a cartoon in the storytelling style of Samurai Jack, but in this world setting? And or game theory, is Hyper Light Drifter based off of Samurai Jack? So the last part of that, I can definitely see some influences, I think.
Parts of it, yeah.
It's not like a full-on, this is Samurai Jack inspired.
Yeah.
At all, but much in the same way that Hyper Light Drifter is so in tune with its music and its visuals, Samurai Jack is like the exact same way. Like, episodes of that show are music videos. There's an entire episode where not a single like line is spoken.
Yeah.
It's hard to not see a dot connecting these two.
Yeah, I mean there's what's the bad guy in that? Aku or something like that's what he's called? Aku, yeah. I mean, that's a big, weird black figure that like has a face that's sort of creepy, and you feel that same sort of thing with the Judgment or whatever that weird black mass that follows you around is called. Yeah, Judgment, yeah. And you feel that same sort of thing. I think there are elements for sure. Yeah, definitely. The other drifters that you find, drifter that you find, the smaller stories that are told about other characters and what they've done and how you help them. Like, I almost feel like Samurai Jack is the other drifter that you find. Like, if this world were to have one, that's what he would be, which is cool.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's definitely a good one. What was the other part of the question, by the way?
Would you be down for a cartoon in the style of Samurai Jack, but in this world setting? Yeah. Duh. So, of course I would.
Cartoon, yes. But what's funny is that, I don't know if you know this because you haven't brought it up yet, so you probably don't. The director for the Castlevania show for Netflix has already been tasked with doing a Hyper Light Drifter show for Netflix.
No way.
Yes way. Go ahead, Google it, dude. It's a fact.
I'm Googling it right now.
Google
Hyper Light Drifter cartoon. Go
Folks,
away,
this is why
Google.
you don't have voice operated assistants in your house and then use the word Google.
Oh shit, mine got me too. Fuck, go away. Well, damn, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see what that's like.
And Devil May Cry.
Yep, and a Devil May Cry show as well, yeah. I'm very excited to see what those become. I don't know what the style they use for Hyper Light Drifter is. I don't know how they're going to tell the story, but seeing the Castlevania show, I think they're just going to knock it out of the park. So I'm very excited to see what that is.
God, that show is so good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, now I get to daydream about that for the rest of my life because it's never going to release. Okay, cool.
It'll be out. 2020. 2020.
2020. My favorite year. I'll be alive for that.
Oh, yeah. We'll all be in the cloud. It's fine.
Oh, sweet. On that note, we're going to take a little break. And when we come back, it will be spoiler time. Hey, welcome to the break. Before we proceed on, I just wanted to give a quick shout out / thanks to our Patron supporters. Thank you guys so much. Shouts out to David Snotter, Mark B. Writing, Puking Goombas, Steve Z, and Storm Hughes. Y'all's support helps make this show a thing-to-do.
Yeah, and if you want to help support the show, if you want to vote on what games we end up playing, and you just want to get in on the conversation in a deeper way, you can always check us out, patreon.com/indiebytesyt, and toss us a couple bucks, see what's going on.
Give us money, please. Welcome to the spoiler section.
Ooh, a little jingle for this too. It sounds just like the Hyper Life Drift jingle. That's crazy.
It does. Don't tell them, they'll sue.
Oh no.
So, all right. The first thing that I want to ask is about the ending. Not necessarily the ending itself. I think the ending is great. But it feels weird to me that there isn't an alternate ending for collecting all the doodads and MacGuffins.
So,
I think, I want to clarify, I like that there isn't, but the way the game is structured made it feel like there would have been.
So, I don't know if that's necessarily true, but
I
get what you're saying, though. I think it's like a traditional gaming thing where when you have so many, what feels like lore blocks, they end up being literal text that you can translate.
They are literal blocks of lore.
Whenever you see that sort of thing in a game, it feels like doing that offers you something. Like you get something extra for doing that.
In a way you do, just not
You do, but yeah, you have to go out of your way to get that resolution. But it feels like when you do something like that, especially in a smaller indie game, whenever you get everything the game has to offer, you get something extra. They offer you a little piece of the story. And in a game like this where everything's very cryptic, that's kind of the immediate place your brain goes. Like there should be something.
What's the true ending here?
Yeah. And I think it's nice that there isn't one like that. Doing all that extra stuff is more for your own sake, I think. You learn something about these people. Like, how do they hide things? Where do they put things that are important to them? And that's cool. Like, that's a really cool way of doing it. And I think, that's all you need to do when you're making a game like this is just, especially in the case of Hyper Light Drifter, where everything is so cryptic, not having a special story for doing all of the stuff or collecting all the things just drives home that this world is impenetrable and you can't understand everything. You could only understand what you are able to find, what you're able to see.
And it's not even necessarily that you're able to understand it. You're able to be told something about the world. Whether or not you decrypt it is entirely different.
Yeah.
I sort of felt like I definitely agree with what you're saying, but also the more I think about it, the more I feel like the fact that there isn't a second ending is just I'm trying to think of the right words for it, but it's more a sign of how this world is unwavering, and it's like you can fight and earn and gather as much as you want, but that's not going to change the end result.
Yeah.
And that when we talk about the themes of the game, and how this is a directly influenced by Alex's heart condition. That feels like a direct connection there.
No matter what you do. No, for sure.
No matter what you
do
at the end of all of it, no matter how much you fight for something that you want or need, you're gonna die.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's a really dark way of putting it, but yeah, no, for sure.
That's what it is.
That's
though,
what,
right?
yeah, that is what it ends up being. Like the Drifter tries their best to get all the way to the point it needs to be at, to save the world, to free the world from this blight. And despite all that effort, you're still just a rat in the cage. There's nothing you can do. Yeah, sorry. Despite all his rage, still just a rat in a cage. Yeah. He, I think it's a beautiful metaphor for the condition, but it's also just a beautiful metaphor for
life,
moving the world forward. And in life. And you can't, sacrifices are made and they're not always going to be made for, for the victor. You don't get to go home every time you do something special or sacrifice your time or your effort or who you are and get a victory parade. You know, sometimes things don't work out. And that's nice. Like, that's a good thing to have, I think, at the end of a game like this, where everyone, despite their best efforts, wasn't able to save everyone else. You know, you find these people in desperate situations on the edge of society. They've become alcoholics. Some of them are stuck in crystals without their family and their home. Like, just stuff like that. It's so desperate despite their efforts, despite trying their best to stop the giants, to stop the librarians or whatever. Like, all of that sort of stuff. It's a really powerful conclusion to that story that, you know, sometimes we all try our best and everything will work out for other people. Sometimes you have to make those sacrifices.
Yep. I think it's really good. Honestly, it may be one of my favorite endings of a game in a while.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm a nihilist. I don't know.
World bad. That's it.
World bad, we die.
Yeah, oops.
And oopsie. So I really like the naming convention for the core bosses. They are all named after tarot cards.
Yeah, the Hierophant and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and I just wanted to point out how kick-ass that is.
Yeah, someone sure is into psychic stuff, huh?
I just think it's a cool thematic thing.
Well, for sure, yeah.
Judgment, Hanged Man, Hierophant, Emperor. That's fucking rad.
Yeah, you got the Anubis that walks around with you and stuff. Obviously not totally attached, but just like how the dog is very obviously... Not very
Is this just
JoJo
JoJo fanfiction?
Oh my goodness. The judgment is your stand. Oh boy.
Oh boy.
Never watched JoJo. I don't know what anything I just said means.
It was me. Judgment.
Zawarudo. I don't know. That's a thing they say, right? Oh my god.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You did it.
Oh, I referenced it.
Sorry.
Anyways, sorry. Hyper Light Drifter. My bad. Yeah. So we talked about this in the past about the sort of abstract storytelling where they don't say anything, like in Fez or I don't remember what game we talked about it in particular, but yeah, there's just, you know, there's a lot of games, a lot of indie games that tell stories without actually saying anything, and I think this one is like the only one that gets away with it just because it's not trying to say anything that is concrete. I feel like, anyways. Like, there's a lot of things you can draw from this game, a lot of metaphorical examples. There's this great, really, really just absolutely killer article from Julie Muncie on Vice, and they talk about their gender transition, how they came out as transgender, and the game's sort of use of the past, and how the Drifter is this character that goes around and collects artifacts of the past and remnants of it, and uses those to help bring the present back into a state of normalcy, back into a state of positivity, of growth, of rebirth, and how using those elements of the past allows you, not just in this game, but in life, and for Muncie in particular, in their transition, to find yourself again, to build yourself back up from the past that you once knew, the life that you once had, the life that the world once had, right? In this game, I mean, the ultimate conclusion is that the Drifter has saved the world, and you could draw so many metaphorical connections for that, allegories for that. I've heard stories multiple times, and I'll include them in the Extra Bytes article for this episode, but there's like a couple really good interpretations of the story for people who are creative, for people who, like I said, in Muncie's case, have gone through coming out as transgender and all that sort of stuff. It's all really, really interesting. That's what I love so much about this and its abstract storytelling. I don't know if you feel that this game does that in a good way, or do you feel it still falls in the same sort of traps of other games? Do you think it's not exempt from those problems?
Feel
free to disagree.
No, I like it. I think it's used in a very, very powerful way. I don't know, like I wasn't able to do a whole lot of extra reading on this, so I haven't seen like a lot of the takes in like that article that you mentioned, which sounds fucking incredible.
Yeah.
I think the environmental storytelling is phenomenal. And yeah, the sort of experiential like allegories that this game has are amazing. And I don't have a but. I think it's great.
Yeah, no, it is really good. I will say that, like, while I think it does a really good job, and while I think its lack of concrete messages that it tries to have within the text itself allows it to get away with not having a very straightforward, sit down, this is what the text means sort of thing. By not having that, it does allow itself to do that in a really well constructed way, and in a way that feels more acceptable. It is still a game that's telling its story without any text.
There are still concrete facts to the story, though. Also,
there are elements to the lore of the story.
Like the frog people invaded the place of the otter people. Like, that's a fact. We know that.
So there are those things, but I mean, like, the message of it, right? Like, there is no message in the end of that. It's just kind of a thing that happened. The metaphors, exactly. It doesn't really try to draw anything super specific, I don't think. Where there are games that I've played, I can't think off the top of my head, but there are games that I've played that have not said anything in particular. Virginia, I think, is a good one, where it doesn't use any language to explain what it's trying to say, but it is, you feel in the back of your mind that it is trying to say something. But, I finished Hyper Light Drifter, and I don't feel like it's trying to say something with that abstract language. It's just giving you the space to interpret something. It's giving you the space to figure out what you want it to say, or what you want it to mean for you. And that is really cool. Like, that is how I think you do it right. But unfortunately, a lot of games kind of took that idea, ran with it, and didn't really know what it meant, unfortunately. And didn't know that it worked in this context so well, and tried to apply it to their own stuff. But I don't know. Maybe that's
I think you're right. I don't have anything to add to that. I think you're spot on. Like, wordless storytelling is extremely difficult to do, especially in an interactive medium, I guess. I mean, in general, it's difficult. We're looking at hieroglyphs at that point, and pictographs and all sorts of stuff like that. It does, again, make me think of that same Samurai Jack episode, but that's different because that's telling a direct story that we are witnessing happen. It's not telling us a story of a past. And also, that shit got no metaphors. This is a blind dude using sound to fight ninjas. Ain't no metaphor there, bud.
Yeah, probably not. I don't remember that episode very well, but I imagine there probably is something.
It's a good episode.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, no,
shit.
Good game. Very interesting
good game.
Things going on in it.
You mentioned earlier that there are a number of areas that, like, you were getting, you were playing through the game for, like, the second or third time or whatever for this podcast, 18th time, I don't know. And there were moments that you got to that still had the same impact.
Yes.
What were they? So I can name a couple of that just, like, sent chills down my spine.
So these are, like, the really obvious ones that I'm sure you agree with.
The Titans. Anytime a Titan shows up.
The Titans for sure. When you walk north and you see the first Titan in the snow, like, just on the mountain, you don't see it, like, right in your face, but the first time you see it in the distance,
he's all the way back in the distance.
Yeah, in the background, but you could still see its head and its arm and its body. You could see the sheer scale of the thing, and it's just like the way the music comes in is like,
just that fucking stinger, just
it just kills.
Oh,
it kills.
Shit, that's
the
good.
Timing is so good.
Woo!
There's that. There's the first time you see the Titan in the east.
In the water.
Yeah, in the water.
Yeah. That's actually the one that sticks out the most to me, because the first time I played it and this time it didn't hit me I didn't realize what exactly I was looking at fully until I, like, move the camera around a bit and I see, like, oh, that's all of its body down there sinking, like, further than I can see, and it's gripping onto this massive sword, and it's so good. So good.
Impeccable. Just impeccable moments. The one that I think is probably the coolest is the one at the end and the sort of reflection that the game has on its intro. The almost cyclical nature of the game.
Ended.
Yeah. Like, seeing the same thing in multiple cases, not just in the way that the drifter sits at the altar in front of the fire, but the way that you stand in the ocean, the way that you, like, look on at the world and you're gripping yourself from the sickness and all that stuff is just gorgeous. Really, really well done. Really good, like, cinematography, I guess, even though it's pixel art. I don't really know what word you would use.
Direction.
But yeah, that's probably better. I'm excited to see how they translate that to that animated show if it happens, which hopefully.
Got it better.
Very, very cool stuff that they do with the visuals. And I mean, obviously we should have talked about this in the not spoiler section, but dude, the pixel art. What?
Oh, it's so good.
Like, what? One of the best animated games of the last like decade.
The animated intro itself is just like, it's an example, like, disregard that it's pixel art. It's an example of phenomenal animation.
Yeah, just in general.
It uses like frame rate and timing and punctuation and all them good animation words so fucking well. It's so good.
Yeah.
And it gives you just enough mystery. And it gives you a lot of mystery.
Yeah.
It's nothing but mystery. And speaking of that, actually, so I mostly tried to do some research on like the lore and timelines and interpretations and stuff of this. And it seems to be that the common take is that at the beginning is like a vision that Anubis, the dog, is giving you to try and get you to help with killing Judgment, which is this like infection in this immortal cell thing. And then partway through that vision, Judgment is actually what infects you with this disease. And then Judgment starts to stalk you. And there's a whole lot of really cool lore stuff of how like they both Anubis and Judgment pull their power from this wellspring, which is that weird winged halo looking thing you see in the cutscenes. And then at the end of the game, after you've killed Judgment, that vision that you have of the clear water and the skyline is Anubis giving you a vision, equal parts to be like, this is what you saved, and also I'm giving you this vision so you don't feel like you're dying in a cave somewhere. And I think that's really cool. I just wanted to like talk about how kick-ass that is.
No, that's an interesting interpretation of everything. Yeah, like a very literal interpretation of it, but a very interesting interpretation.
I actually thought that on my playthrough, my first one, and honestly this one before reading lore, I thought Anubis was the bad guy. Like, I thought Anubis was a part of Judgment, and I still kind of do. Like, they seem to be pretty intertwined. And that sort of goes into themes of, like, I mean, it could have all just been a hallucination brought on by this disease that he had, right?
Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, well, that's, that's something that I think is sort of arbitrarily left up to the player with that final fight. When you fight quote unquote Judgment, and after you kill it, you
stab the cell.
Exactly, yeah. So that leads me to think that like how much of that stuff was a legitimate thing going on, and how much of it was just like, a thing created by the librarians to, they realized how powerful this thing was, and they created a disease that could affect certain people and draw them to destroying the cell, or the cell itself wanted to die, or something. There's a ton of ways to interpret the story, and I think that's the interesting thing about the game as well. And a question that I have for you, because every game that we play that has a very esoteric means of telling its narrative, you specifically tend to look up the sort of explainers or the interpretations of the narrative. Mm-hmm. And this isn't me being like, hey, you fool, you read other people's interpretations, you fool. This is me saying there's a very vocal amount of people that tend to be very against the idea of explainers, ending explained, game theory. What do you think about those? What do you think about people explaining the endings of things, games, movies, whatever, that maybe don't come out and state what their conclusions are, or what they're trying to say? What do you think about those sorts of things? You seem to appreciate them to some extent, so I'm curious.
I think, and I'm going to say this outright, I think that the people who take dumps on those kinds of pieces are party poopers. Y'all got to stop sucking and let people do what they want to do. With regards to this, I like these ending explain things. And it's not that like I'm some kind of idiot who doesn't have my own interpretations or who can't figure out that, what Soylent Green was.
It's people.
Oh, fuck! Sorry, we're in the spoiler section. Sorry. Whatever. I'm going to tag this with spoilers for whatever that movie was. Godfather? No.
Isn't it Soylent Green?
No, it's too obvious.
Okay.
I like these ending explain things because I like to see what other people get from something. There are definitely instances of like Bird Box ending explained. Like, what do you? There's nothing to explain here, jackass.
Yeah.
Like, what? I'm making fun of Bird Box again, but what was the Bird Box monster?
What was it follows?
What was it follows? It's capitalism. Always. Like, come on,
Always.
people.
Come on.
There definitely are like a shitty low tier variety of these ending explained and ending theories videos, lore explanations and stuff like that. And I think that I think the quantity of the bad ones outweighs the good ones, but that's the same with like everything. I don't hate YouTube videos because so many of them are terrible. I don't hate video games because a lot of them aren't super great. There are so many amazing ones, and there are so many really cool ones that bring cool things to the table, and I think they're worth looking at and considering.
Okay. All right, fair. How
about you? I'm a flip switch this on your head.
Oh no, I hate them. All of them, Nevin. I'm so sorry.
I knew it. I knew it.
I don't like them. So for me, my reasoning is really just that, like, I don't think there's a good way of doing it, because I think the problem is that when you make things like that and you put them out there, they're for an audience. Personal interpretations are great. And I think that hearing other people's interpretations is also good. But I don't know. It's the same thing with like opinions on games on YouTube. Not just reviews, but like, those just like negative teardowns of, relatively popular games.
I know what you mean. Like, yeah.
The things that
your favorite game is bad.
Yeah, the things that become the cultural touchstones for a lot of people whose literacy in games is based entirely around, sequelitis Mega Man X or sequelitis, Ocarina of Time. That sort of stuff that people point to, or, more recently, Matthew Matosis's videos on BioShock Infinite and Dark Souls 2. Those are videos that people tend to point to as proofs as to why those games are bad. And I see the ending explain videos in the same sort of light, in that while yes, they are just like personal interpretations a lot of the time, they're presented as if they're not. And a lot of people will look at those as proofs as to why what the endings mean or what the movies meant in the long run. It's the same sort of thing with CinemaSins, where like they'll have something negative to say and people will point to those as proofs as the movies being bad. They're things you can point to and say this is bad, or in the case of ending explains, they're things you can point to and say this means this. So for me, the problem is that while yes, there are a lot of things to get from those pieces if you are someone that is interested in those stories, especially in the case of Hyper Light Drifter, where your interpretation, you might not be able to have a metaphor because you haven't been through an experience that connects with the game. So it is good to have that sort of thing. But the problem is that a lot of YouTubers don't write in a way that makes it sound like it's an interpretation. They write in a way that makes it sound like it is the real ending, what it really meant.
So the problem isn't
is presentation, not the existence of them.
Exactly. Okay.
Yeah.
I think I can agree with that.
That is my core problem.
I think I can totally agree with that. The main issue is it's not the tool that's the problem.
Really, Unity is the worst engine.
Unity? Unreal Engine 4 ending explained.
Oh, there you go. That's a YouTube video right there. I watched that.
That's my next YouTube video. Sorry, Hunt Showdown. Anyways.
More like Hunt Throwdown, brother. It's time to do ending explains. Come on.
Hell yeah. Finally. I've achieved my final YouTube form. A white man with glasses doing ending explained videos.
With brown short hair talking about video games. Come on.
I'm gonna have to cut it.
It's pretty short.
I'm gonna get the Griffin McElroy.
There you go. Well, just add to the white boy talking about video games on YouTube aesthetic. There you go.
Here we go.
Oh yeah.
Hire me, Polygon.
Man.
Whew.
That was interesting there. I don't know what just happened. Fever dream.
Either. I don't think I liked it.
Hyper Light Drifter is a good game. It is a good game.
I like it.
Yeah. one thing, I guess, before we get to the not spoiler-free questions. This game, I mentioned it briefly when I was touching on Julie Munsey's piece, but this game, there are a lot of games about rebuilding, about taking a destroyed society or a destroyed world and rebuilding it. The Prince of Persia reboot, Nier Automata, depending on how far you get in that, spoilers. You know, there's endless amounts of games that do that sort of thing, and do it in ways that are interesting or do it in ways that aren't interesting. But Hyper Light Drifter, I feel like, is the only one that I play and I feel that same sort of emotion in like such a clear way. It's not a game where what you're doing directly impacts stuff, but it is a game where you feel like you're rebuilding the world in a way that's just so profound. I love it. I don't know what it is. It's hard for me to put into words, but just the way that you have to defeat things, defeat the blight, take it away from the world, and no one sees you doing it. Like when you go and talk to people, they have all these stories about the pink drifter saving them or doing something nice for them. And that sort of stuff is great. But you in this game do not get to do that. You aren't there before the apocalypse. You aren't there before the aftermath of it. You're there after the aftermath. You're there to rebuild. You're not there to help. Nobody knows that you, like, people know that stuff's happening after you showed up, but they don't immediately show that they acknowledge it. But the powerful thing is that you meet these characters and they're going to tell stories about you in the future. And you can feel that in the same way that the pink drifter gets to have its story told, that you learn about what they're doing. You learn about what they've done. This world will do the same for the drifter. And that is like so powerful. I love that. I love that this isn't a world that you're rebuilding for nothing. It's the same thing Ashen had, where this isn't a world you're rebuilding for nobody. This is a world you're rebuilding for the people that live in it. And you can feel that they're going to remember that and they're going to talk about it. And that stuff kills. It's powerful. I love it. I love it. Love it.
I'm glad you pointed out Ashen because I was going to mention it too.
Yeah.
Yeah. It does the exact same. Well, not the exact same thing, but like it does it.
Yeah.
This game's fucking good, dude.
It really is, man.
I'm so glad we got to do it.
Same. Shout outs for voting on it, folks. Thanks a lot.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. All right. So we have a few more questions. We've got two from Chariot Rider. The first one is, what is your favorite boss?
Yo, shout outs on that video, by the way, first. Chariot Rider.
Hell yeah.
Big time.
Dude.
Big time.
Chariot did a fantastic video on how Hyper Light Drifter uses wordless storytelling.
Bro, not even just on Hyper Light Drifter. A great video on the abstraction of like discussion and storytelling and narrative and what words mean. Man, so good. So good. Anyways, sorry, what was the question?
What was your favorite boss, you dingus?
Sorry, I forgot. I was getting too hype on Chariot Rider.
It's okay. I forgive you.
Favorite boss? Man.
Mine's Judgment, man. Judgment kicks ass. That's such a good fight.
Man, so it was my second time playing. I cheesed all the bosses. Like, I remember what I had to do to just absolutely mop them.
Why?
So there's nothing that I, like, really, gameplay-wise, I think was, like, particularly good. They were all really easy. You know, hashtag gamer. Not even hard, guys. Come on.
Get out of here.
I think the one that sticks out to me the most is probably the one from the west with the crystals, the Crystal King.
The
Hangman. Whatever, man. The king with the crystals on him, bro.
He ain't a king though, buddy. He's a general.
Man, whatever.
Read your lore, nerd.
Man, I don't know. I don't read no books, bro. Yeah, that was really good. I liked that. I liked that the world, you felt the world impacting that character, which is cool. That was just really cool. I really like that visually.
I really, really like. He's pretty cool.
And it comes through in his attacks too, which is really cool. Like the shards when he stabs the ground and stuff. Like that's really dope. I love that.
It's pretty good. Judgment, I think, just has my favorite like boss design.
Yeah. Fair.
And just his mechanics rock. It's so cool, and it can be. God, I just gotta say, I love how so many combat encounters in this game are over like that. Like they can be over so quick. They're like these bursts of intensity, and it's so satisfying. There were multiple encounters in this game where I had to like put the controller down and like breathe for a second when I finished them because they were so intense. It's good. It's good, good. Chariot's next question. It's something we actually kind of touched on already, but he asks, so this game uses a lot of environmental storytelling. What was the most interesting environmental story you discovered in Hyper Light Drifter?
That's good.
That's real good. I am going to say dude stuck in a crystal in a treehouse.
Yeah, that's a really good one. There's so much you can draw from that story.
Yeah, like was he a researcher working on the laser cannons?
Yeah, was he just a random citizen just living his life, and the just little creatures that make the crystals got in there? Yeah. There's so much that could be. That's a really, really good one.
There were actually a lot of just people stuck in crystals, like lying around, and I thought that was cool. But that specific one was good.
Man. Yeah, there's so many like good moments, but I'm trying to think of something that like really stuck out to me as particularly interesting. Yeah, I think I'd go with the crystal. It's either the crystal one or it's the otter in the house or in the church thing in the east.
The temple?
Yeah.
That one's really, really good.
That's a really good one. Just in like, you could see the effects of the world. Like each of the great environmental storytelling moments are really good for showing how the citizens of those regions were affected. But that one in particular of how these people are cowering in a temple because they're afraid of the frogs.
There's just two of them in there, right? It's just
two,
it's
right? One that like looks pretty dead, and another that's just barely hanging on. Like, yeah, just so powerful. Great moments.
And they're gonna tell a story about how you showed up one second and then the frogs fucked off the next.
Yep, you saved them. You got rid of all the bad people. You stopped the frogs. Yeah, exactly.
What do you think about the fact that you don't? Do you think this game is made more powerful by the fact that you don't get to see the results of your actions? You have to sort of
totally.
imagine them?
Absolutely, yeah. That's and that again draws to the allegory of this being Alex Preston's sort of his story and what he thinks will be the end of it. Like, this could have been the last thing he did was make this game. Luckily,
you're right.
That's not the case, but that could have been, right? He could have never seen what happened afterwards. All he could have known was that he gave everything he had to create something so beautiful, so powerful, and so fun to play. And that's going to be one of the games that people look back on as one of the great indies of this decade, which is ending next year.
God.
Sorry, whoops.
It's ending this year.
Oh yeah, good point. Yeah, whatever. Semantics. Yeah. Yeah, it's just a powerful conclusion to that and a really good connection to the creator, and yeah, I really like it. I dig that a lot.
Next question from friend of the show, Matt Draper at Matt Draper YT. Go check out his videos. They're fucking great.
Really good.
They're really, really good. And he wants to know what your favorite track from the game's score is. And mine is Panacea.
Dude, mine's Vignette Panacea.
They're so good.
They're good songs, man.
Fucking love how you beat the boss and then, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the only song in the soundtrack to use a non-synth piano?
Yeah, I think so. Panacea,
that's fucking powerful.
Yeah. I love it.
That's so good. It's so good.
Like, there's so many good, just like walking around ambient, whatever, tracks.
And so many good music stings, right?
Yeah, lots of great moments where there's like the dynamic music and it just picks up at just the right moment as you're walking towards something.
But this pops in at a specific moment. This is this game's song with vocals.
Yeah. Really powerful stuff. Really just a good track, the Panacea, but also Vignette as the intro for the game, and then it also being the sort of ending track for the game. Like, that's so cool.
Bookmarks.
Yeah, man, exactly. The reflections of life and the end of a journey, all that sort of stuff. It's great. Love it.
It's good. Oh my god, this game's so good, Jesse!
It is, man.
Did you have anything else you wanted to say about Hyper Light Drifterino?
Can't wait for the second game. That's all I care about. Give me whatever it's called.
Solar Ash Kingdom.
Give me Ash Ketchum. Give me the game.
Solar Ash Ketchum Pokemon.
There you go. Gotta catch them all. 151. No, never mind. Bring back the National Dex. Whatever. I don't know. I got nothing.
You tried so hard.
I really did. I tried.
Thanks for joining us for this month's episode of Byte Club. August's game, voted for by our patrons, is My Friend Pedro. Oh my god, I am stoked as hell for this one.
Same.
And guess what? I stole this next bit straight from the Steam page. My Friend Pedro is a violent ballet about friendship, imagination, and one man's struggle to obliterate anyone in his path at the behest of a sentient banana. The strategic use of split aiming, slow motion, and the old stylish window breach create one sensational action sequence after another in an explosive battle through the violent underworld.
Ooh.
That's going to go in my voice reel because that was good. Real good. If you would like to vote for September's game, which, no big deal. It's my birthday month, whatever. Head on over to patreon.com/IndieBytesYT to learn about how you can. The choices for September's game are Tacoma, Outer Wilds, and You Are Jeff Bezos. Please vote for You Are Jeff Bezos,
please.
Oh my god, I want to dive into that so bad.
I've played it already. It's great. I want to talk about it. So please vote for You Are Jeff Bezos. But if you don't, both the other games are both fantastic. If you pick Tacoma, that's good too. Really, all I want to do is talk about workers' rights. Pick either of those games. The Outer Wilds, I also want to play. Pick whatever. I don't care. Just vote.
Any of these are going to be good. Any of them. As always, we will be taking your questions about next month's game and chatting about them here on the podcast. So send them in as you come up with them. We got 3 ways you can send in questions. Email them to nevin@indie-bytes.com. Use a contact form on the Indie Bytes website, or just yell at me on Twitter. You can find Jesse on Twitter at GUARASCIA.
Quirasha.
And you can find a whole bunch of indie game related content on Twitter at IndieBytesYT, on YouTube as Indie Bytes, and at indie-bytes.com. This episode's music is from the Hyperlight Drifter soundtrack by Disasterpiece, and it can be found on Bandcamp. I think there's a vinyl version of it somewhere.
Probably.
You can find it. Just Google it. It's everywhere. Thank you again for listening. We're looking forward to getting your questions and talking about My Friend Pedro next month. We'll see you then. Bye!